I'm Lisa, I'm the Barefoot Pampered Chef, and today we are going to make some Christmas cookies. And I know it's been a long time since I've been on, but life does get a little hectic. So today, first I wanted to show you a few things. For Pampered Chef, for your cookie making needs, has these really great scoops. They come in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. They are really perfect for making things like cupcakes or anything that you need to dish out in perfect proportions. They have these little scrapers that scrape out whatever's inside of them. So they're almost like ice cream scoops. And they even have this little nice tiny one, which actually makes perfect size for the little mini muffin tins. So I wanted to show you these first. The second thing that I wanted to show you is this is my make and take mason jar kit. So it has the drink bottle in it that has the infusion thing in it. It has the mason jar in it for lunches. It comes with a spoon and a fork that kind of stick together. The mason jar is really neat. When you open up just the top portion, there's a little spot to hold your dressing. When you open up the whole thing, you have a small snack jar that you can carry stuff in that has its own little lid, and you have the mason jar. So that's really great for making take salads and other things. So you may be thinking, what am I going to make today? Well, I have a recipe from Pampered Chef that actually takes a German dish or a German traditional holiday cookie and combines it with flavors from Italy. So the flavors that I'm talking about, it's called spumoni. So spumoni comes from the Italian word meaning froth. And so spumoni is actually a gelato, but it's a flavored gelato that has 3 traditional flavors. When it originally started, it was a 3-layer dessert that had 1 layer of fruit, 1 layer of nuts, and 1 layer of another flavor. So the traditional spumoni flavors, which are actually more common now in America than they are in Italy, is cherry, pistachio, and chocolate. So those are the flavors that we're going to use today. Now you may be thinking of another 3-layer traditional Italian kind of dessert, and that is Neapolitan ice cream. Neapolitan is actually a play on spumoni that has been Americanized. The cherry turned into strawberry, the pistachio turned into vanilla, and they left the chocolate. So that combination is a strawberry vanilla chocolate combination, and they named it after Naples, so it's Neapolitan. So the 3 different flavors we're going to use for our cookies today are cherry, chocolate, and pistachio. Now, we're going to actually make a traditional German cookie, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it's called a Spritzenbach. So Spritzen is actually the German word for squirt. So we're going to use a cookie press and squirt these cookies out onto the tray. And Spritz cookies are what we call them in the United States today. So Spritz cookies are an extruded cookie that are made in different types of shapes. And so I'll get a little bit more to the Pampered Chef Spritz cookie maker here in a second, but I want to make our flavors first. So when we start, we're going to start off with 3 tablespoons of shelled pistachios. Now I have my mise en place in place, so that means I have everything in place, and it should be fairly easy to make all this stuff. But we are live, so accidents in the kitchen do happen, so just bear with me. 3 tablespoons of pistachios. We're going to put those into our manual food processor, and we're just going to give them a good chop. This is good exercise. Okay, we gave those a relatively good chop. Actually, I may chop them up just a little bit more. We don't want pistachio butter, people. We just want pistachio pieces. So this is how those look, just a fine pistachio kind of crumble there. Some of them are whole, which we'll see how that works. But I'm going to pour these back into my prep bowl. Now these cookies have all flavors combined, so I'm not going to worry that there's a little pistachio dust in there. And I'm going to take 8 maraschino cherries. We're going to need a lot more maraschino cherries for this recipe. And like I said, you can find it on Pampered Chef. So if you don't get how many or what quantity, it's all on pamperedchef.com / it's actually pamperedchef.biz / Lisa Wright. These are 8 maraschino cherries. I'm just going to pop these into there. And I'm going to give these a quick zhuzh. So these are all nice and chopped up. And I'm actually just going to scrape these back into my bowl. And I see all the love going across the screen, so I think people really missed my demos. Either that or my husband sitting there doing all of those. Okay, so we don't need our manual food processor anymore, so I'm just going to throw it into my prep sink. Easy cleaning later. Make sure all these maraschino cherries are off of here. They smell really good and I kind of just want to eat them. That's my favorite part of the sundae, by the way. The third flavor is chocolate. So I have 1 ounce of a semi-sweet dark chocolate bar, and in my 1 cup prep bowl, I'm just going to pop that in the microwave just to melt. I'm going to pop it in for 60 seconds. You can pop it in for 30-second intervals if you're a little worried about if it'll scorch or not. While that's going, I'm going to start my batter here. I always have one of my nifty Pampered Chef mats underneath my bowl for easy cleanup. I have 3 sticks of softened butter in here, and over here I have 1 cup of granulated sugar. So I'm going to put this granulated sugar in, and I'm going to grab my blender. You can do this by hand if you want. I'm going to do it the blended method a little bit easier. And I'm going to cream together the sugar and the butter. So that means make the sugar and the butter a nice creamy texture. It'll almost be it'll turn a lighter color. It'll almost be a little bit of a frothy or lighter texture. All right, so that's pretty good on that. That's pretty much the consistency I'm looking for. I'm gonna grab my chocolate out of the microwave, make sure it's melted. I'm gonna put it in for another 30 seconds. Looks like part of it's melted, but maybe not all of it. While I'm doing that, I'm gonna crack 1 egg into my butter and sugar mixture. Now I use farm fresh eggs. You can use store-bought eggs. I think farm fresh eggs just give things a little bit more of a homey quality to them. Put this over here. And I'm gonna blend this together. All right, so that's all blended together. I'm gonna set this aside for just a second because I wanna show you a trick with baking that a lot of people don't know. And what happens is if you don't do this, a lot of your baked goods will have too much flour in them. So what I'm gonna do is instead of digging into the flour and then, you know, kind of packing it all into my cup, actually, is this a half cup? That's a half cup. I'm gonna use a cup because we're gonna do 4 cups of flour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig my spoon in and I'm going to lightly fluff this into my cup so I'm not packing. And when it gets over the top, I'm just going to take the edge of the spoon and I'm going to shear off the top. I am not packing this in. If you pack it in, you're gonna get way too much flour. So I'm actually gonna throw a cup in there. I'm going to do this 1 cup at a time until we have 4 cups in there. Let me check on my chocolate. Hot! That's why you need those cool little microwave mitts. That is melted. So we're going to whip this together a little bit. This is going to be a thicker dough. So don't worry about it being too thick. As the butter gets in room temperature, it's going to melt a little bit more, and so it's going to be less thick. So we've got 1 cup in there. We're going to do our little trick. And get another cup. Probably going to throw 2 more cups in there right now, and then we'll get that 4th cup in there in a minute. And then you want to leave your flour out because we're going to actually kind of flour the board a little bit for this. We're not going to like roll it out or anything, but you do have to make this into little logs to fit into your Spritz cookie maker. You may have to do this at hand at some point if it gets a little thick. One more cup. Put that in, set that all aside. Be clean when you work. You don't need this either. Just make sure all the flour gets incorporated. That's pretty good. So we're done with this. I'm going to set that aside. And now what we're going to do, clean up this workspace a little bit, is we're going to separate this into 3 different batches because we're going to make the 3 flavors for our cookie. So, I'm going to grab 2 stainless steel bowls. I'm going to try to nicely separate this mixture into thirds. Might have to mix it, just make sure you get all the flour mixed in. What I do is take a little bit of each. Looks like we may need a little bit more of each in each bowl. And then we've got a fairly dispensed mixture here. All right, there we go. So now in one of these bowls, we're going to add our pistachios. We're going to add a teaspoon and a half of almond extract. So here's my teaspoon and here's my half a teaspoon. I like almond extract, so I don't care if we spill a little bit. And then the pistachio is usually the green color because pistachios are kind of green. So we are going to add 6 drops of green. 3, 4, 5, 6. If you really like green, you can add more. I love green, but I'm going to go with what the recipe says. And then I'm just going to mix this up. You can use your hand mixer for this, but I just feel doing it this way works a little bit better. Once I get it a little bit incorporated, I'm actually going to start using my hands. All right, so that's fairly mixed up for the minute. I am going to come back to it and use my hands because we're going to make logs out of these. Our next is going to be our cherry flavor. So I'm going to put that into this bowl. Use a little bit more in that one. Just go with the flow. So we're going to put our 8 chopped cherries in. And then we're going to add 4 drops of red. There's 4 drops of my red. And we're going to mix this together. Now, like I said, this is going to look really crumbly for right now, but that's fine because once we get our hands on it, the butter will start coming down to room temperature. It'll start melting a little bit more with the heat of our hands, and it'll all come together like a big snowball with packing snow. So I've got that fairly mixed together here. And like I said, I'm going to come back and mix this more with my hands, so that's okay for right now. And on our last, ta-da, we're going to put our melted chocolate. I really seriously want to lick the bowl. This chocolate smells so good. All right, and I'm going to mix this all in together. Now what we're going to do with each of our individual flavors is make them into 15-inch logs, and we're going to cut each of those logs into 3 pieces. So we're going to get kind of 3 full containers or 3 full Spritz cookie makers out of them. Woo! Chocolate. Okay. So we'll start working on this one with our hands. I'm going to put a little bit of flour out so this doesn't get stuck to my cutting board. And by this point, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this is so much work for a cookie. But really, it makes 7 dozen cookies, so it's not that much work. We're going to get all of this dough, just kind of work it by hand until it gets all nice and incorporated. And as you can see, it's all sticking together really nicely. So even though you didn't think it would stick together, you're melting the butter with your hands, and that makes it all come together a lot better. So it's almost a Play-Doh consistency, I would say. Let me make sure all these little crumbles are incorporated. While I'm doing this, I'll just let you know I have my cookie sheet out so we can start extruding onto the cookie sheet when we need to. And I also have my oven set at 375 degrees. All right, so this is pretty well incorporated. Set that into my prep sink. And I'm going to kind of roll this out. Now, the great thing about one of your little cutting mats is it has a 15-inch measure on here. So my whole entire cutting board is 15 inches. So that is how long I want my cookie log. And then, I'm not very good at math, but my son is. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. So we want each one of these logs to be 5 inches. which is approximately the length of your cookie maker. So I'm just kind of working at this to get it to the appropriate length. Almost there. It's like a giant chocolate snake. It's really yummy. All right, we made it to 15 inches. So I'm just going to kind of set this, once I cut it into thirds, aside. So there's my 5 inches right there. There's 10. And there's my 15. So I'm just going to set these aside and work on my other 3 flavors. So we're going to go for the cherry next. And again, it all comes together into a nice big cherry flavored snowball. Now the traditional recipe for just traditional Spritz cookies is sugar, flour, eggs, and butter. So it's really a very buttery cookie, and it's actually meant to be very fragile. They're not meant to be the kind of cookie that you could drop on the floor and it'll hold its shape. Okay. We're going to start rolling this one out here. I'm just rolling really gently because this dough is just a little bit crumbly, but it's still holding its shape really well. And I would say that my dough is approximately 1.5 inches around once I get it all the way out to the 15 inches. So there's 5, there's 10. I'm going to put my chocolate with a cherry, chocolate with a cherry, and chocolate with a cherry. Last but not least, we're going to do our pistachio with the almond extract in it. Mix this up really well. And now I just want to say that while I've made Spritz cookies multiple times before, this is actually the first time that I'm making this recipe, and I'm making it live. So don't be scared about making different recipes, because what happens if it doesn't turn out? Nothing. You make something else. If you make a whole bunch of cookies and they don't turn out the way that you want them, then take the cookies, put them in a blender, crush them all up, put a little bit of butter with them, smash them down into a pie pan, and you've now got a cookie crust that you can throw some pudding in and make a really good pudding cookie crust pie, or even a no-bake Jell-O cheesecake pie. All right, so we've got our pistachio with the almond extract in it. This one might be a little bit more crumbly just because you might have some pieces of the almond in it, which I'm hoping don't get stuck in my extruder, but we should be okay. Kind of work this out until it gets out to 15 inches. My favorite cookies of all time, I just kind of figured out this last year. I got a whole bunch of really old cookbooks from a good friend of mine, and one of the cookies in there was called a Dutch fruit cookie. Oh my gosh, those are amazing. My other favorite is kind of like my grandpa's favorite, which was Ranger cookies, which are kind of like everything but the kitchen sink. But these are called spice drop cookies. So my favorite candy in a cookie is a great thing. So I'm going to cut this into 5 inches. There's 10 and there's 15. All right. So we're done with this cutting board. We didn't really need that flour, I guess. Throw it over there in the mess to clean up later. So now what we're gonna do is take our cookie maker. Now this comes with, I think 9 or 10 different little designs in it. What we're gonna use is a number 2. You can use a number 6. So hopefully you can see that shape. It's almost like a flower pattern. And we are gonna put this, you can open up both sides of this, which is nice. And it just fits down into the little rim here. So we're gonna screw this on. And we're gonna put in each color. So there goes 1. There's 2. Now, if you have trouble putting in the 3rd one, you can cut it in half and go half from one direction and half from the other direction. And that should work just perfectly. So all 3 of those fit in there rather nicely. We're gonna screw on our top. And now this cookie press is a turn cookie press. So you just kind of have to fiddle with it for the first couple of them to see what you're comfortable with. We're gonna put it down on our cookie sheet. The first one you may have to give a few turns to get it started. It's coming. Maybe. Ah, there it is. You should only have to do a few turns with it. And it may just take a little while for you to figure it out. If it doesn't come out right the first time, just shove some together and make it look like a pretty cookie. We're working on it. Did I tell you that I'm not the best Spritz cookie maker in the world? All right, almost. Apparently my chocolate and pistachio does not want to stick to my tray, which is fine because these are kind of coming out cute anyway. That's better. Getting there. Almost. There we go. It's coming out now. All right, so these are supposed to look a lot cuter than they are, but like I said, I am not the best Spritz cookie maker in the world. So I am probably either turning too much or too little, and I'm just gonna have to play with it and see where it goes. But I've got a lot that I can do. That one came out really nice. So I'm kind of just going to finish up this tray a little bit here, and then I want to show you the last little bit. I'm wondering if I have a pistachio stuck. If that's why my green isn't coming out as well. And I was told the trick to these is to pick them up fast away from the pan. So they're getting there. I'll learn as I go. See, I'm getting better. I'll show you here in a second. Okay, so they look really bad, but that's all right, because they're still gonna taste good. So our last little tip to do with these, we're gonna take our close and chop, or close and cut, And I've already put in a whole bunch of maraschino cherries. So I'm just going to close it very gently. I'm going to run my knife through it. And it's going to chop all of those maraschino cherries in half for me. And then each one of these cookies, which I'm going to have to remake a few of them, that's fine. You put a maraschino cherry into the middle of it, and then we're going to bake it at 375 for about 10 to 12 minutes until they're nice and golden brown looking. So, besides the fact that my Spritz cookies are turning out horribly, but they're going to taste good, so that's fine. I hope you enjoyed this demo. You can find all of this and more at www.pamperedchef.biz/Lisa Wright. You can find me at Instagram or on YouTube or even Twitter at #BarefootPC. Thanks. I hope you all have a great holiday. And if you want me to demo anything, just let me know. Thank you.